Hello, Internet. So, over the weekend, I saw a couple of movies. One of them was Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Now, anyone who knows me personally will know that Marvel movies are very hit or miss for me, especially this newest phase. I enjoyed Spider-Man just fine, and I thought Doctor Strange was decent. I never got around to seeing Shang-Chi or Eternals, although with the latter it seems I've dodged a bullet. I was also pretty disappointed by Love and Thunder, and I never, ever want to see Black Widow again. Yeah, you forgot about Black Widow, didn't you? Or maybe you didn't, but I almost did. I feel like I should also mention that I was not the biggest fan of the first Black Panther. I really like the production design, the costumes, the music, and I especially like the character of Killmonger played by Michael B. Jordan. He's honestly one of the better MCU villains from this era. Beyond that, I thought the pacing of the movie was really off. The juggling of both Claw and Killmonger didn't quite work. The visual effects, especially towards the end, were really rough, and the overall story had some pretty glaring issues that really damaged my enjoyment of the film. I appreciate it for what it did well, and I appreciate it for what it stands for culturally, but all in all, it was mostly another Marvel movie for me. If I were to rate it today, I'd probably give it a 5, maybe a 6 out of 10. I'm leaning towards a 5, sorry. So with all that out of the way, I'm actually pretty happy to report that this film was quite good. For one, basically every element of the previous film has been improved. The cinematography is absolutely beautiful, with some shots rising well above the average Marvel movie. The music, with the exception of a pop song towards the end, was fantastic. The percussion and vocals in particular for the Royal Guards I thought was really well done. The production and costume design was, once again, well considered and pretty masterfully put together. The costume designs in particular for Namor and the Talokanils? The people of Talokan. The blue people. Sorry. Anyway, they were really good. They were pretty awesome. Also, the action and visual effects are just massively improved from the first film. In the original, the action just lacks a sense of weight and impact, but here, every hit and move feels important and real. There's this encounter on a bridge that is actually quite intense, involving some fantastic choreography, editing, and sound design. Before continuing, I should address the biggest hurdle that this movie has to jump. The death of Chadwick Boseman was obviously quite tragic and put a huge strain on Ryan Coogler and his production team, as he had already written the sequel when Boseman died from cancer. So not only did he have to rewrite the film, but he had to rewrite it without its main character. The fact that this movie works at all is amazing. Not only does it work, but the way they handle the death of T'Challa within the film is very respectful, nuanced, and it ties in beautifully with its cast of characters. This movie is basically about what an unexpected and senseless death of not only a beloved leader, but also a beloved brother, son, and friend can do to a group of people. These characters, which honestly had very little to do in these films up until this point, absolutely earned their place alongside the best MCU characters. I found myself caring quite a bit about Shuri, Queen Ramonda, and Okoye throughout this movie. Every one of them deals with their grief in a very different way, and all of them felt very justified in their actions. There's this scene partway through the film when two of these characters are arguing about a frankly rash action that the other took. But because of the believable emotion on display, I found myself sympathizing with both characters' perspectives. That's extremely difficult to do, especially in an MCU film. This movie is really effective in that way. There are some things that don't work for me in this film. I think that the involvement of the American storyline is something that could have been altered or maybe even just dropped entirely. I think they could have narrowed their focus on the conflict solely between the villain and Wakanda without really involving the US or any other forces, and it really wouldn't have changed all that much. I love Martin Freeman, but I don't find his character interesting or important in these movies. Extending from that, there is a new character introduced to the story that kind of gets the plot going, and I'm still not entirely sure how I feel about her. I know she's going to matter more in the larger MCU, but here she just didn't really work that well for me. Her character is sort of fine, I guess. Her comedy especially didn't really work. I think I just don't like the elements of this film that tie it to the larger universe because it detracts from the story that matters in Wakanda. Maybe I'm still recovering from the joke apocalypse that was Love and Thunder, and I'm just overly wary of the quippy Marvel joke machine.
Well, you're right.
So I do want to get a little bit into spoilers, so if you don't want to be spoiled, click to this point in the video to avoid them. Ready? Alright, here we go. So I think the character of Namor was written about as well as he could have been for this film. I'm really not familiar at all with the character from the comics, so I don't really have any baggage there. Honestly, from what I can tell, he is kind of a strange, borderline silly character from a very different age of comic books. So the fact that he works this well seems like yet another feat this movie pulls off. It really does kind of seem like a Mysterio situation. Like, this shouldn't have worked, but it kind of did. I also really enjoyed Killmonger's cameo in this film. It was really nice to see Jordan again, and his inclusion in this plot absolutely makes sense for Shuri's character arc. I also really like that Shuri kind of goes to the dark side for a bit in this film. She has a very similar arc that T'Challa has in Civil War, which makes sense as she is younger and has much more taken from her in a much shorter amount of time. I also thought they handled the death of Queen Ramonda pretty well. I actually was really not expecting her to die in this movie, and I thought that the way it happened worked quite well. There was obviously love between her and all the other characters, but many of their plot lines were unresolved, which mirrored the sudden death of T'Challa really well. All these factors compounded into Shuri being in a very different place by the time the finale comes. All in all, I quite enjoyed this film. With all of Phase 4 and the MCU in general, I don't tend to have the desire to watch these movies again, so whenever I do, I know I had a unique experience. I don't really have the desire to watch the original Black Panther again, but I can easily see myself seeing this one again. This movie basically improves in every way from the first film, even if it does have its own shortcomings. There are a couple of pacing issues, most notably the finale, and a few exposition dumps, but nothing really dampens my enjoyment of this film. The performances were fantastic, especially from Bassett and Guerrera. I'm really sorry, I really hope I'm saying that right. I am actually kind of looking forward to seeing this movie again. Yeah, with all that in mind, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. I'm gonna give this movie a 7 out of 10. Farewell!